and we will be making that decision here within the next hour or 2 hours to proceed with that de-energization, and we anticipate that we will start that de-energization sequence by 8 to 10 p.m. time frame. And if we see the weather pattern continue to shift, we will do our level best to minimize that impact to our customers and communities in that area. Even though we're seeing the weather pattern shift on the start time, at the moment, we're still anticipating that the weather is going to subside at noon tomorrow, again, being a forecast. And if that changes to earlier or later, we will provide that update accordingly.
Now, Dan, thanks for your patience.
The governor today said that this is an outrage, that we're paying for years of mismanagement. To the hundreds of thousands of people who are going to be in the dark tonight, what do you say to them who think that they are suffering for your mistakes?
I appreciate that question. I appreciate that sentiment. And we share the sentiments that have been out there in terms of the impact that this has. Now, I can't go and speak into the mistakes of the past. What I can tell you is when we look at the climate and the environment in which our electrical assets live, operate, breathe in, it's very dynamic. And that environment has changed drastically over the last several years, given the drought conditions, given the amount of dead, dying, and deceased trees, given the amount of vegetation that is ripe and ready to be a strong fuel source for a potential wildfire. So the environment that coexists with our electrical assets has completely changed from my perspective, and the way that we need to maintain our assets, construct them, that's also changing, and that's exactly what we are doing as part of this.
Follow-up, how far have you come along with the hardening of the wires in the high fire threat areas? Because you had a marker for this year, correct?
We did, sir. So we had a target of 150 miles,
that's right.
And we have completed 100 miles, and we are on track to complete our commitment of 150 miles this year.
Right, but you have 25,000 miles of wire in high fire threat areas, and your reports say that you're having a hard time finding people to actually do the work and also the materials. What steps are you taking to do that much more quickly? Because clearly that's the key reason you're doing this, because you can't trust your own equipment at this point, correct?
We'll not necessarily say that we can't trust our equipment. I keep coming back to the fact that it's the coexistence of our equipment with the environment, and the factor of safety that existed in the environment naturally when the electrical systems were compromised does not exist anymore, and that's the factor of safety that we're looking to get from our own infrastructure. So we are actively, and we have put an all-hands-on-deck approach to be able to get all qualified personnel available in our service territory, and just this year we brought in more than 2,000 qualified linemen to do the enhanced inspections, which is unprecedented. We did 18 months of work in a 4-month time frame. So we're doing everything we can. We've nearly doubled the amount of vegetation qualified personnel that we have clearing vegetation in and around our electrical overhead system. We have now more than 5,000 individuals focused on that effort.
Over the past 10 years, can you assure me that every dollar
earmarked for maintenance? Christian, you're next. Appreciate the question. You got three in a row. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you. We're going to Christian. Go ahead.
KTVU Channel 2. Wondering if we could talk for just a moment about, we're also getting a lot of frustrated viewers who are asking if this is going to be their new normal. In other words,
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Right. We're wondering, we have a lot of frustrated viewers who are asking if this is going to be our new normal. In other words, what's to prevent this from happening again in 2 weeks, 2 months, perhaps even again next year? Is this something people should prepare for periodic blackouts for days or a week at a time going forward? What's to stop that from happening?
Yeah, no, thank you so much for that question, and that's what's on top of our mind, and this is exactly the things that we're trying to do so that we reduce the duration and the frequency of the public safety power shutoff events, because we know the impact that it has to our customers and our communities itself. But given the amount of risk on the especially this time period with the fuel conditions, the high wind conditions, we've seen it. We saw it last year in November. We saw it in October of 2017. So this is 3 years in a row. And just like we are here in the seismic part of the world, dealing with wildfires is the new abnormal within California. So this is something, from my perspective, right, that we all have to work together to find the right solution set for. And our focus is to continue to work on upgrading our infrastructure so we reduce the amount of times that we have to do the public safety power shutoff and the potential duration and the impact.
So then just to follow up, just to clarify then, and I'll pass it back, just to clarify then, customers should anticipate similar shutdowns in the future until this work is completed?
Unless the weather changes significantly and the vegetation condition and the fuel loading condition and the land and the forest management changes significantly within the state, I would say yes.
And I think what we need to understand, I think Samit hit on the earthquake part of that. People have plans for earthquakes, how to deal with them. They're prepared. They have their go packs. They have a plan for their family. We suggest the same thing for a wildfire. It's a very similar concept. We have a plan that we're executing now to turn off the power. We want our customers and communities to be prepared to do the same thing. They should have a plan. We're going to go back here.
Jean Alley with NBC Bay Area News, following up on this line of questioning. The new normal is climate change and wildfires. You're a utility in Northern California. Are you fortifying your utility system to be able to survive those wildfires, or is this the new normal?
We are absolutely doing that, and that's really what I was speaking to in terms of the effort that we have. We have more than 8,000 qualified personnel working on clearing vegetation, doing enhanced inspections, doing undergrounding, overhead resiliency of the system, to really have that electric infrastructure that now naturally creates the factor of safety that the environment has taken away from that coexistence.
Can you do the question so people on the phone can hear so we can understand the conversation?
When will that work be complete?
So it's a multi-year journey. It took many years to get to this condition, the climate change, the environment, with the drought conditions we've discussed, the vegetation conditions changed in a very rapid fashion, and we do have a significant risk on our electrical system, and this is the measure that's needed as a last resort to ensure the safety of our customers and communities. And as we continue that infrastructure work, and as we continue to do that work safely and as quickly and expeditiously as possible, we'll be able to reduce the impact of the public safety power shutoff event. So it's a multi-year journey.
Come on over here.
This is Emily Turner, KPIX5. So you want to talk about climate change and you don't want to talk about mistakes made in the past, but there are a lot of angry customers out there who will not let that go. Why is your utility not prepared for this new normal?
So from my perspective, I have not spent my focus, time, and energy on looking at the past. Right? We are where we are with the electric infrastructure and the environment. Now, there's a lot of questions in terms of could we have done things sooner, should we have done things sooner. We are at this point in time, and what I could tell you is that we are doing everything that we can. And I could tell you the 24,000 employees that we have in this company and thousands of contractors that are supporting us because they're an extension of our PG&E family are sacrificing their lives personally to be able to ensure the safety of our customers and communities. We have not, and I have not gone back to look at why it wasn't done. We are where we are at the moment. And we can all Monday morning quarterback this, right, from my perspective. But our focus here is to ensure the safety now and on a going forward basis and have that unwavering commitment to do that. And that's exactly what we're doing.
And that's part of your community wildfire safety program, the multifaceted program.
That's correct.
What percentage would you say, well, two questions. One, so would it be fair to say that you actually have no estimate as to when the work will be completed? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, we do have an estimate, and that estimate we've put forward as part of the wildfire mitigation plan that was filed, publicly available, and that was approved as well.
Which you're running behind on.
I'm sorry?
Which a plan that you're running behind on. Did you tell the PUC in July that you're running behind even that plan?
No, we have, when you look at the goals and the commitments in the plan, respectfully, sir, we are at or have exceeded many of those milestones. The area that we are continuing to fall a little bit behind schedule on is our enhanced vegetation management program, but we have line of sight to be able to complete all of that work as well by the end of this year.
And what percentage would you say you are, at what percentage are you in the work at this point? 50%, 75, 25%?
What work, sir?
In the total scope of the work? How far along are you? 25%, 50%, 75%?
So it depends on what type of work, sir, that we're talking
Well,
about.
you just talk about the overall program.
So when we talk about the overall program for system hardening, we are right on plan in terms of 75% complete. When we talk about system enhanced vegetation management, we're about 50% complete. When you talk about weather stations, high definition cameras, we've done all of the work that we had on plan for this year. So when you look at the 53 commitments that are outlined in the 2019 Wildfire Mitigation Plan, we have either met many of those commitments or exceeded them, and we're doing our level best to bring all the qualified personnel here so we can continue down those aggressive goals, because we realize the implications of those goals, because it all goes back to the safety of the infrastructure and the customers in our communities.
JD?
How fast did the winds actually get in the North Bay today? Because we've been hearing a lot of concerns that it actually wasn't that windy even on the peaks there. And given the delay in phase 2, when do you expect power will be fully restored to everybody?
Yeah, great question. I'll take the first one first, and then Sumi can handle the second one on restoration. So winds actually in North Bay, and don't get complacent because the strong winds are coming tonight. So we're going to, very much like October 2017, the strongest winds occurred once the sun set, and we had the fires ripping over some of the elevated terrain in the North Bay and the Northern Sierra, and we're expecting a very similar setup tonight. So the strongest winds are on the way, if not occurring now. If I was checking Mount St. Helena live, I could guarantee that station is ticking up as an indication of what's to come. As far as restoration, I'll turn it over to
Well, why was Marin County de-energized at like 2 in the morning or whenever it was this morning if they haven't had any intense winds even on the peaks there yet?
Yeah, I think Sumi touched on this, but this had to do with the interconnectedness of the grid. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, thank you, Scott, and thank you, JD, for that question. So given the complexity and the complex nature of the de-energization sequence and the multiple areas within our service territory that are in scope, the de-energization sequence that we had to implement has to ensure the continued stability of the grid itself. And that's the reason why we unfortunately also had to impact Marin and some of the additional areas that really are going to see that peak risk time period this evening going into early tomorrow morning. It really has to do with the nature of the system itself.
Okay, and the very last thing, what is the total number of customers that will now be impacted across the entire event? Before it was 800,000, but it sounds like it's been scaled back. Some people are going back on. I think people are going to get a little confused about what's the right customer number to use.
Yeah, so this is a multi-part event with different stages of weather risk, different parts of our service territory. So ultimately, that number of 800,000 customers is still appropriate in terms of total customers impacted, but some customers may be impacted for a less duration than others. So at the moment, we're forecasting anywhere from 600 to 650,000. Because of the additional switching operations we were able to do to reduce impact to 50,000, and especially if we're able to bring Humboldt on this evening, that's an incremental 60 to 80,000.
Here in the front row. We'll go in the back, and then we'll come to the front row. No, you're going first in the back.
Hi, Gail from Cron 4 News. So your customers are angry with the lack of communication and calling it horrific, with 1 day notice for potentially hundreds of thousands something households who will be in the dark.
Laura, you want to take that question from customer communication?
So thank you for the question. As Sumit stated, this is a dynamic event, and as the event continues to unfold, we're doing our very best to be in advance of that and communicating to customers. There are some instances where the conditions changed, and we were communicating with customers closer into the actual event than we would have liked to, but we're doing our very best to provide ongoing communication and ongoing support to our customers. It's a unique website, and we'll be pushing that out to all of you at the conclusion of tonight's press conference. It will be on all of our social channels, and we'll be tweeting that out at the conclusion of this conference. Thank you.
Here in the front.
I'm Megan Goldsby with KCBS Radio. So I want to make sure I understand the East Bay, South Bay phase. It was noon, it got pushed to 8, it might be 10. Is there a world in which it doesn't happen at all? Can we keep pushing this back through the night? Or can we tell those customers, oh no, it's happening, we just are pushing you back as we watch the weather?
Yeah, so based on the latest weather forecast that we monitor, it looks like this wave's first going to start in the Sierra, and it's pretty much starting now. It's going to arrive in the North Bay a little bit later. And then it's going to arrive farther south in the East Bay and South Bay, basically Santa Cruz Mountains, at the time that was communicated, about 8 p.m. tonight and a little bit later. So essentially, based on the latest weather forecast models I've seen, the winds are still expected to arrive. We could see peak gusts over some of the elevated terrain in the East Bay, like Oakland Hills North, Oakland Hills South, some of those weather stations, as well as Sonol Ridge, some of the ridges of East Bay, as well as the Santa Cruz Mountain. We could see gusts 45, 50 miles per hour tonight. Overnight is the kind of peak risk period.
So it's definitely going to happen? I know we're talking about weather here, but...
Based on the latest forecast, I believe it to happen. However, we're monitoring conditions 24/7, and if the weather doesn't materialize as expected, then we do have the opportunity to abort in any situation, but we'll need some good confidence in that happening. Great.
The last thing I would add to that is we're doing our level best to be judicious, right, both in terms of the timing and aligning that with the weather forecast, and also minimizing the impact of potential catastrophic wildfires. So because we do understand the disruption that shutting off power causes.
On this issue of safety to employees, there are reports of egging of a PG&E station or office in Northern California and shots at a PG&E vehicle that the CHP reported this evening. Can you talk about, do you have specific reports of assaults against workers or property?
I think what you're referring to is what may have occurred in Colusa County. I think that occurred yesterday or last night. We would refer to the local authorities for the details of the incident itself, which is the reason why, kind of in our prepared remarks, I ended on that comment. It's critically important for us to be able to get this message out there. When you see a marked PG&E vehicle or contractors that are working on our behalf, again, just a reminder, they're no different than our customers, and their families and their kids go to the same schools that our customers do. So it's critically important that we're providing a safe environment for them. And those are the types of incidents that really cause us concern. Again, in that specific incident, we don't know the specific details. The local authorities may have that. But it's our responsibility to ensure the continued safety, not just of our customers and our communities, but our employees and our contractors as well.
And by keeping everyone safe, that's going to help get everybody's lights back on quicker. If there's a law enforcement situation, that's just going to cause the outage to continue to go on.
So if I could follow up on that last question.
Sure. Can we get you a microphone? I would love it. Thank you, Dan.
There is a narrative out there that much of the billions of dollars that was earmarked for maintenance, at least part of it has wound up in shareholders' pockets. Can you assure me that every dollar earmarked for maintenance over the past 10 years has actually gone to maintenance?
Thank you for that question, Dan. I haven't focused on that. That is not a question on top of my mind at the moment. That's a historical issue from my perspective. There's a lot of people that are focused on that issue. The unwavering focus that we have, and every single individual and every single employee and every single contractor at this moment, is to ensure the continued safety of our customers and our communities, given the adverse weather forecast that we are seeing in regards to the catastrophic wildfires. And that is our only focus at the moment.
Can you assure us that moving forward that money for maintenance will be spent on maintenance?
I am not focused on that, sir, respectfully.
Last question. Or we'll go one more here and one for Christian.
Can I ask two, Jean Ellie with NBC Bay Area News. One is sort of well, let me ask one and then I'll ask the other. bringing power back on, you said the weather event is supposed to end on Friday. Does that mean that's when inspections will begin? And inspections will happen during the day if there are repairs needed? Can repairs happen at night? And so if the weather event ends on Friday, when is the earliest folks in, say, Sausalito can expect to have their power back on?
Thank you for that. Thank you for that question. So, in regards to the process, so there's two different areas. You mentioned Friday. So Friday applies to our phase 3, which is in the Tehachapi area, because we're forecasting that peak risk to continue through tomorrow into Friday. So that's the about 4,300 customers we identified in the Tehachapi, Kern County area. In regards to a large majority of our customers that have been impacted in Sierra Foothills and East Bay and South Bay, we anticipate at the moment, again, this is the weather forecast, to be able to have the all clear, meaning the adverse weather forecast subsides and traverses through our service territory during that time frame, at which point we can begin our visual inspections. And as we do the visual inspections and we identify circuits and lines, if there's no damage, we'll be able to do that restoration in a very short time frame. Where there is potential damage, that may take some additional time. So a key takeaway, if we get the adverse weather that subsides around noon tomorrow, that's when we're going to commence with more than 6,300 qualified personnel, 45 helicopters to start the visual inspections and safety inspections, and you're going to start to see the restoration come on at that period of time. We do have to typically stop at sundown because those visual inspections can only be done safely during daylight hours.
And then sort of a technical question. So these happen in waves. Why does it happen in waves? Are people at a substation? And it would be the reverse in bringing power up. I'm going to guess it comes in waves. Can you explain the waves?
Sure. It's the coexistence of the weather itself. So Scott previously talked about when you typically see this northeast offshore wind pattern, it starts with the north-south winds in Sacramento Valley, comes in through Sierra Foothills, and then later traverses to the North Bay area, and then later traverses to East Bay. So different parts of our service territory see peak risk at different points in time. And then with the electrical grid, it's the source feed typically is at the substation. So when we start to de-energize, especially the large footprint that we're talking about here, we also have to work closely with the California Independent System Operator, CAL-ISO, to ensure that we're not compromising the stability of the power flow, because we are all interconnected on the western grid. So that's the reason why at times you'll see an impact in North Bay, even though there may be a peak risk that's happening in the Sierra Foothills. So that's the reason why you see the wave and the sequencing. And the reason why we do the sequencing is, again, what we stated before. We want to minimize the duration of the impact of the power outages to our customers.
Is it manual?
No, we could do manual operations, but primarily we leverage remote capabilities through what's called SCADA. It's the Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition System, where we have the ability through our control center to be able to operate our system.
So again, just to be clear.
Last one, we're coming over here to Christian. Oh, you don't have a microphone, so nobody can hear you on the line.
Quick question for Ms. Gimono about that website and how it unfolds. Two things. First off, when people are able to access it, if they are currently in a power shutdown area, will this forward information to them about when their power may be restored, or is this simply a site to let people know which homes are going to be affected, firstly? Secondly, are you sure that it's robust enough? Because there have been a great deal of complaints about the current website, which I believe last night Sumit had said it received 7 to 8 times its normal volume. Are you sure that this new website is robust enough to handle the volume?
So the first question is, initially, as we launch tonight, customers will be able to go and find out information around their community and their specific home. As we move into tomorrow, we're going to start building the capabilities for us to post estimated time of restoration for customers. So tonight it's outages. And then as we move through the next 24 hours, we're going to build out the capability so that we can have customers receive information through that source around estimated times of restoration for their homes and their communities. The second question around the robustness of it. It is robust. We're using a third party to host this. We've been working very closely with Cal OES and the CPUC. They have been supporting us and reviewing this as we have been building this out, and we are confident that it has the robustness to handle the volume that our customers are going to need as they come into the site. This will not be a site that customers can use to pay their bills or to do other types of transactions. That will still be housed on pg&e.com. This site will be specifically focused on supporting customers through this event.
Last question for George.
So again, just to be clear, if you're initially you're saying noon, then 8, is it now that you're looking at more like 10 p.m. is the window to start phase 2?
Yeah, so our goal typically is before we get into the actual weather event window, several hours before that, we would start the de-energization sequence so that we have our system de-energized and in a safe state and condition before we start to see the adverse wind events. So that conversation is happening, and the decision making is happening at the moment right now in our emergency operations center. So that window is anywhere from 7 p.m. To the 9 p.m. time frame.
To actually start the power shutoff.
That is correct, sir. And again, it could be moved to later if the weather pattern shifts again. So that's at the moment the best available information we have.
And again, just to summarize from JD's question earlier, you're looking at 600 to 650 is going to be the affected amount, just to clarify that.
Correct. The total customers impacted were about 800,000, but where we are in terms of the 50,000 that we were able to bring back because of what I discussed, and the work we're trying to do to bring Humboldt back, if you add that together, it's about 100,000. So we're kind of in that 650, 700
and where were the 50?
Estimate. The 50,000 were within the Sierra foothill area in different parts of our system. We were able to do the operations and bifurcate the customers that are in the lower fire risk area compared to the elevated and extreme fire risk area.
Okay, so we've got to get back and make some decisions for the East Bay tonight. So we're going to thank everybody for coming. Appreciate you being here. And we'll do another one of these tomorrow night. We are committed to doing these throughout the process to make sure you guys are up to date. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead and scoot out.
Will be getting updates on social media, is that right?
Yes, we'll be getting updates on social media. Yes,
And is that 650 number, is that total or is that phase 2?
That's everybody.
That's total.
It sounds like you're saying 800.
Footprint is 800, we're reducing down to be 650 to 7.
Can we still go with 800 though, the number?
800 was the original estimate for our news release. Through all the good work of Samit's team, we've been able to get that down to probably 650, maybe a little bit above that. We're at 700. Current division,
Overall impact.
Kern County alone is 40,000+. We've got it down